Hi, fifth grade. This is our lesson 85, and this lesson talks about the idea of capacity, liquid measurements. So I'm going to start out with our visual for knowing gallons, quarts, pints, cups, and ounces. So we start with the big G. The big G stands for gallon. Then we put 4 Q's inside the big G because there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon. Then inside each Q, we're going to put 2 P's. The 2 P's stand for pints. And then inside each P, we're going to put 2 C's, and those 2 C's stand for cups. And then eventually we're going to put little 8's inside each of the cups, and those 8 stands for ounces. They kind of look like O's if you write them like this, and so those are 8 ounces. And so we have our big G. 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. 1 quart is 2 pints. 1 pint is 2 cups. We could say 2 cups is 16 ounces, or we could even say 1 cup equals 8 ounces. All right, so that's kind of what it looks like as a visual. And we can use that, we can go back to that and help us to do our math with that. So let's say we're looking at metric system. Metric system has one major unit, and that's the liter. And that liter has 1,000 milliliters, milli meaning 1,000, so we have 1,000 of them in the liter. If you look at the milliliter is about a dropper, an eyedropper, and it takes 1,000 of those to make 1 liter. So if you have a 1 liter bottle in your house, it's going to take 1,000 of those little droppers to make that 1 liter. Okay? If you look at converting it, though, it makes it nice and easy, because if we have 400 milliliters here and we want to make it into liters, if I know that 1,000 milliliters equals 1 liter, the difference between this number and this number are the 3 zeros there. So if I look at this, I'm going to take off those 3 zeros, and I would get a 4 here. So we have 4 liters equals 4,000 milliliters. Same thing here. 2,000 milliliters, I take off my 3 zeros, and I get 2 liters. Down here, if we're reversing it, then we have 6 liters. Well, if I look at the difference between this and this, I say, oh, I put 3 zeros onto it because it takes a lot of those little guys to make the big guy. So if I had 6 of those liters, I would have that 6, and then I would have those 3 zeros that I put onto the end of it. We're actually multiplying by 1,000. Here we're dividing by 1,000. Okay, just to show you what we're actually doing. The shortcut just says add the zeros on here. Okay, so if I have 4,000 milliliters, that's equal to 4 liters. If I have 2,000 milliliters, equal to 2 liters. Well, let's take a look at what if we had something like this. 1 quart of juice is how many ounces? 1 quart equals blank ounces. Well, if I were going to do it the long way, I would have to figure out how many ounces in a cup. So if I have 8 ounces in 1 cup, and it takes 2 cups to make 1 pint. Oops, I'll undo that a second. I don't know why I did that, but we'll undo that. Okay, so we have 2 cups to equal 1 pint. And we have 2 pints to equal 1 quart. So when I look at that, that would mean that if I had 1 quart of juice, 2 pints. Okay, if I have 2 pints, then I double this and I get 4 cups. 4 cups here, I have to double that. I have 8 of them, so 4 cups times the 8 is going to give me the answer I need. But it's easier to look at our picture here. if I have 1 quart, here's my Q, and I want to know how many ounces that is, I just look for the eighths. How many eighths do I have in here? I have 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, or I could say 8 times 4, which would give me 32 ounces. Okay, we can get 32 ounces by looking at that. And just by looking at 1 Q, we can see how many ounces are there in there. 8, 8, 8, and 8. So it gives us 32. In a different situation, if I had 5.5 liters equals how many milliliters, well, now I've got this half thing going on. So I have to figure out how much is a half a liter in milliliters. So if I have 1/2, we know that when we take a number like 1,000 here, and we have half of it, we're going to divide it by 2, by the denominator. And when we do that, we're going to come out with 500. So we have 500 milliliters in 1/2 of a liter. Why do we do that? Because that's going to be important for this part here. I need to remember this when I have something like 5.5 liters. So I know 5 liters then. 5 liters would give me that 5,000 milliliters plus my 500 milliliters that I have for a half a liter, and then that would give me 5,500. 5,500. So when we have that half, we have to make sure that we go, okay, I'm going to figure out the 5, that's going to be 5,000, and then I have to figure out, I take that 1,000 and divide it by 2 to find out how much is half of that. And then we could figure that out with this. If we have a half, let's say we have a half in the standard system. So we might say, we have our gallons, we say 1 gallon equals 8 pints. These are gallons, these are pints. 1 gallon equals 8 pints. 2 gallons equals 16 pints. 3 gallons equals 24 pints. And so on down the line. We can find our rule for this then. If 1 gallon's 8 pints, then that means that the number of gallons times 8 will give me the number of pints. So if I wanted to figure out how many gallons are in 5, or how many pints are in 5 gallons, I would take the gallon, which is 5, times 8, because that's our conversion, and we would get 40 pints. Sometimes when we put it in like a chart situation, it can help us to understand it. Sometimes if we put it in the picture sense, sometimes it'll help us. It depends on what you think is easier for you. Well, I didn't fill in the 4 here. Okay, so let's say we have 4 times 8 is 32. Okay, what if I had 4.5 pints? What if I had 4.5 gallons, sorry. 4.5 gallons equals blank pints. Well, first we'd figure out that we know that the 4 is 32. So this here is 32. We have half of a gallon. So half of those pints. We have 8 pints here, so half of 8 would give me 4. So 4 pints is a half a gallon. Now if I add those two together, 32 plus 4 gives me 36, so it's 36 pints. Is my answer reasonable? Yes, my answer is reasonable because 4.5 falls between 4 and 5, and 36 falls between 32 and 40. And actually, if we would figure out the difference of this here, 40 minus 32, we have 8. So half of 8 is 4, so I can just add 4 to here and I get 36. Okay, that's going to be halfway between 32 and 40. Okay, so when you have a half a gallon, again, if we go back and look for 4.5 gallons on our big chart here, 4.5 gallons equals blank pints. I'm looking for pints. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in 1, 4.5. Okay, so I have 4 G's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 times 4. That gives me 32. And then I have a half of a gallon, which gives me 1, 2, 3, 4 P's in there. So we do 8 times 4 is 32. Plus that 4 gives us 36. Same answer, whether we use the pictures or whether we use the chart or whether we use the addition, subtraction, multiplication type thing. All right. Just refer back to that, and maybe sometimes it's good for you to draw a picture out to help you. Sometimes you might just do some manipulative of numbers like we did here, where we said, okay, we're just going to add 3 zeros to the 5 to get the 5,000. And then we found that half. Sometimes we have to do a little bit of all of that to figure out capacity. Okay. If we were in class, I would show you different ways of doing that with, with the water bottles and the droppers and all that kind of stuff. I would show you exactly what it looks like. Okay. Your homework today is out of your book. You have a worksheet for lesson 85. Just want to touch base on a few things here before I let you go off and do your own thing. For number 2, it asks for a prime number. Remember, a prime number is that which can only be multiplied by 1 in itself to get to that digit or to get to that number. Remember, even digits are not prime. Even digits are not prime except for 2. So when you have 3-digit number there. So think about that when you're doing number 2 there. That can't be an even number because it wouldn't be prime. When you look at number 4, it says Tisha counted her heartbeat 20 times in 15 seconds at that rate. How many times would it beat in 1 minute? Remember, there are 4 groups of 15 in a minute. So you have 4 groups of 15 there when you're trying to figure that out. Okay. Our greatest common factor, remember, is the highest number that both of them have to divide by. The one they have in common, the greatest one they have in common. And that division process when we have 3 numbers. Let's review that. Okay. Division problem with 3 digits on top and 3 digits on the bottom. I'm going to show you another way of doing this in a second here. Okay, so we have let's say we have 342 times 168. All right, so our first method, we forget about the 1 and the 6. We're just going to do 342 times 8. 8 times 2 is 16. I carry my 1. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 1 more is 33. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 3 more is 27. Okay, we're done with that 3, we're done with that 1. I'm going to change pen colors just so I'm hoping I'm going to change pen colors here, that this will work. Let's change it to red then for the next one. All right, so then what we do, we're done with this 8. That 8 is done. So I'm going to put a 0 here or a place value holder there. Okay, now we do the 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry my 1. 6 times 4 is 24. Plus 1 more is 25. Carry my 2. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus 2 more is 20. Okay, now I'm done with that 2, I'm done with that 1, and I'm done with the 6. I'm done with the 6. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put those zeros into place. So this 6 is done. So we're going to take that. And again, we have a 0 still in the ones column. We're done with everything in the ones column. And then we have that 0 right here, right under that tens column. Ones column, tens column. We're done with those two. Now we have 342 times 1. So we know 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 3 is 3. And then we add our digits together. 6, 5. 9 and 5 is 14, carry our 1. 6 and 1 is 7, 2 and 3 is 5. And we get 57,456. Now, I'm going to show you a different way to do this. And this is kind of a break apart method. It's kind of the new math that they have out there. So I'm going to show it to you. It might be a method you like. It might be a method you don't like. I've kind of already shown you a little bit about this at one point, but we'll just show you what it looks like. All right, so I have 342. I'm going to put it in expanded form. 300 plus 40 plus 2. Over here I had 168. Right, I think that's, I better have it. 168. All right, we broke them out into expanded form like this. All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to just use it like a multiplication grid. Use it like a multiplication grid, and this is what you see. So if I have, come on, go back to full screen. Okay, I have the two numbers that meet up here are 100 and 300. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, and 1 times 3 is 3. Then I have 60 times 300. I have 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1, 2, 3 zeros, 1, 2, 3 zeros. I have 8 times 3 is 24, and I have 1, 2 zeros, 1, 2 zeros. Then I have 100 times 40. 1 times 4 is 4. 1, 2, 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3 zeros. 100 times 2 is 200. 60 times 40. 204 or 24. 6 times 4 is 24, and 2 zeros. 60 times 2, we have 120. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 1 0. And then finally 8 times 2 is 16. So then what they want you to do is to add up each column. So you have, you can either do it going to the left or you can do it up and down. So you have to have them in the right position. So you have 0, 0, 0. Of course, that's 0. We have this rows of zeros. That's 0. Okay, then we have a 2, a 0, and a 0. So that gives me the 2. I have the 4 in the thousands column. And then I have the 3 coming out here. So, and actually it's exactly the same as like expanded form up here. 34,200. And then you'd add these together. And you'd have the 0, the 2, you'd have 5 in that next column. Then you'd have the 2 in the next column, plus the 8, which would give you 10, carry your 1, and you'd have 2 there. And then finally the bottom, you'd have that 16 plus 20, which is 36, and then you'd have 300 and 400, which is 700, and then the 2,000, and then you would add these up. Personally, I think it's a little bit more work than less, but I just thought I would throw it out there because this is what another way of looking at it would be. We got the same answer. We're doing the same type of thing, but it's just spreading it out more. So that's a method you could use. split apart your numbers, do the multiplication. The nice part about that is there's no carrying over. There's a lot of zeros. It makes it, for mental math, it makes it a little easier. If you want to just play around with it a little bit, you can. But this is the method that also is tried and true. And like I showed you before, we start with the ones column, 8 times 2, 8 times 4, 8 times 3. We put a 0 down here when we're done with the ones column, 6 times 2, 6 times 4, 6 times 3. Put the 2 zeros down because we're done with these 2 columns. Then we do 1 times 2, 1 times 4, 1 times 3, and then we just add the 3 numbers together. All right, so just threw that out there for you because I do know that you have some problems on your homework dealing with those type of things. And I hope your work goes well today. I hope you got the concepts about the gallons, quarts, pints, cups, ounces, and the idea that 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters. And I'll see you tomorrow with your practice test. And you guys all have a great day and be safe and healthy.